OTB's The Hurling Pod with James Skehill and Paul Murphy.
Tá craobhna here in an Ashangailov. People of Galway, we love you.
I don't want to leave the people of Waterford down, you know, because they're my life, you know. People of Waterford are my life, you know, and I love me county, you know.
We love John Malone.
It's almost like they're afraid to kind of go and hurl and just let themselves express themselves. It's like as if they're nearly afraid to make a mistake, and sometimes you have to make a mistake and just throw off that bit of nervousness and have a go.
Yeah, it's pure constipated hurling.
Welcome along to episode 20 of the Hurling Pod. Limerick will have the chance to lift the Liam McCarthy for the fourth time in 5 years in a couple of weeks' time. Super sub David Reidy with 3 points on the bench, helping John Kiley's side beat Galway by 27 points to 121. Kilkenny now stand in Limerick's way in the final. The Cats ruthlessly efficient in seeing off Clare by 226 to 20 points. TJ Reid, a veteran of the 2007 final when Kilkenny and Limerick last met in the decider, sent over 10 points as the Cats booked their place in a 17th All-Ireland final of the Cody era. And there was a late show from Tipperary which culminated in a Paddy McCormick goal with the last puck of the game, which saw them snatch victory away from Offaly in what was a thrilling All-Ireland Minor final at Nolan Park. Episode 20, it is a landmark show for us. James Skehill, Paul Murphy here, of course, as they are every week. Lads, how are you getting on?
Great, well, how are you?
Terrible.
No, here we go, right? We'll kick this off straight away. You should not be feeling terrible, and I don't mean this in any kind of patronising way. Galway hurled really well. You should actually be happy, I think, with that Galway performance yesterday.
Yeah, there was a lot of kind of people that were concerned that Galway could be getting a hammer. You know, I think when people look at everyone was doing the reviews pre-game and they were saying there could be a gap, anything from 7-8 points onwards. It could be a demolition job. So I was, from that perspective, I was delighted in the way that Galway produced the performance that they did. And I know we always say in the podcast like that when you get defeated and you perform fairly well, you can go away with your head high. But it's agonising to know that we had chances to put away the game. I won't say put it away, but to keep ourselves in the game and get our noses in front. We didn't just take those chances. We kind of, I suppose, we digressed a small bit from the way we were playing for the first 66 minutes. For the last 9 minutes, we kind of went lump ball down top of Limerick, which they loved. And Limerick kept playing their pattern in the game, and then David Reid pops up. Like, that's how he got into the positions he did, because they kept moving the ball they did for the whole 70 minutes. So look, disappointing result. If there's any good way to finish the year getting knocked out, I would say that's probably it. Do you know what I mean? It was besides winning the Ireland. And I think there's definitely a positive feeling in Galway at the moment as opposed to a negative one. I think other teams, when they get knocked out, they can get override by emotion, negativity. You can start pointing fingers at players or pointing fingers at management. But I think from a Galway perspective, everyone's kind of looking in the one direction, thinking it bodes well for the future.
Is that part of the agony too, James? Level on 10 different occasions during the game, right in the mix coming into the closing stages too. And Galway at times where even if one of the 3 chances that they poked wide in the closing stages had gone over, it would have been a huge lift. It almost like kind of sucked the energy a bit, those 3 wides late on, which then you've got Limerick, popping over frees at the other end to just extend the lead back out to 3 points. Yeah. That was right in the melting pot for Galway.
It was like when you consider we won we didn't win the turnover battle, but we were right in there with the turnover battle. And you were just in the last kind of 10 minutes, I'm including injury time now, we were kind of crying out for a point off a big play. So I think if you remember on the sidelines down in front of Henry and John, there was a couple of sidelines and Wheeler did a great job turning over, Wheeler don't know and whatnot, and we got a sideline. And we were thinking, right, and then we shot it, and it went wide, and that kind of that little thing sucks it out of you. And then Evan got a great chance out onto the Cusack side, and Evan would be a great shooter, just tailed off to the left. And then Tom Mullen got one under the Hogan. So there were 3 wides from the 66 minutes onwards when Conor Whelan got his last point, and Galway's last point really, that you're hoping to go over. And then when the gap starts opening up, 1 point, 2 points in a game where you said as they were tied 10 points, the margin, like 2 points is a huge margin in that kind of game. And then Jeremy Burns finished off with a free, who was extremely important to them under pressurised situations. But yeah, I look at it and I think we spoke last week and all the weeks before about our efficiency, and I'm looking down here at the numbers and I said we just hit 50% with the amount of chances we had, and I said that I was concerned about the amount of shots Limerick could get, but we matched them on shots, we just didn't match them on efficiency. And when you look back on the game, you can't say we were under undue stress put onto us by Limerick. We got plenty of chances where we were in open space, and just the ball petered off, especially when you consider in the period when Limerick opened up their 6-1 lead, we had 4 opportunities. We'd what you'd probably class as a handy free for the 21, and with 3 other opportunities that we could have scored, and that would have put a different reflection on the scoreboard. But look, I'm clutching at straws trying to point instances or point issues, let's say, from a performance that I would say was definitely our best performance of the year, hands down. Everyone played very well, and if you're asking me, did anyone's stock go down, I'd say no.
Yeah, Paul, Galway improved in pretty much every metric from the last 2 games. Their puck-out's much better. 74% went to hand. 31 out of 42, much better variety, which was an issue going back to the Leinster final. Clearly that's been improved over the last couple of games. Did quite well on the turnovers, as James just mentioned there. Got 1-9 of their own scores coming from turning Limerick over. The one metric which didn't improve from the Leinster final was the shot efficiency. 47 shots, 22 scores. The feeling would be that against a Limerick team who put over 61% of their chances, that's where Galway fell down again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I wouldn't call it clutching at straws there, James, at all. Like, in fairness, Galway did have opportunities here where they could have won the match. And so much of what they did was really good, and they won so many important battles around the pitch as well. Like you said, when Limerick went 6 points to 1 up, I was thinking this game could be over very quickly. And in fairness to Galway, they got themselves slowly back into the game, and then they started to find their feet. And what I thought was really interesting, and I know we'll get onto it next week, but for any team that was going to play Limerick in a final, you were looking at what Galway were doing around the middle of the field and where they were actually targeted, where they were getting scores, and they must have got 2 or 3 scores there towards the end of the first half. I think Tommy Monaghan got one and a few other lads popped up, and suddenly Limerick, they were asking questions of Limerick, that Limerick half backline were wanting to sit back away from them, but Galway were finding this little pocket and were causing problems for them. Even in the second half, Pádraig Mannion came out with a few balls there, had a great catch in the second half. Dahi Burke got to grasp with that full forward line as well. There was just so many areas lads put their hand up, in fairness, really gave it a good crack, and it's hard not to look at it and go, well, there's a good few areas here where we actually could have improved. And the shot efficiency, because like you said, the biggest problem is to try and create these opportunities. You wouldn't think the biggest problem is converting them, but it's a pity when you had the opportunities there to actually maybe get 2 or 3 or 4 more scores and actually win the match. That's something that Galway lads would be disappointed for. But look, as I was saying last week, I expected maybe a 6 or 8 point defeat, but it wasn't. Never mind, it wasn't that. There was a huge chance here that Galway could have won the game. So look, it's a kind of bittersweet one. They'll take a lot from it, but at the end of the day, they didn't win the game. So, but in fairness to Galway and to Henry, like, they got a huge amount out of the team. They did a lot better than the neutral would have expected, or a lot of people would have expected. And there's a lot they can take from it, and there's a lot they can take from it going forward as well.
Yeah, James, when it comes to sharing around the scores, we're doing the roadshow in Limerick last week, and this was a concern that pretty much the entire panel had, was that there was such a reliance on Conor Whelan to score, to basically carry the scoring thread across that forward line. This time though, Colm Mannion gets 4 points, Tom Monaghan 4 points in play each. Conor Whelan is a quieter game where he only gets 2 points, but others kind of stepped up around him. Wonderful goal from Concannon as well. We saw a better variety of scores at least, which was a big concern pre-game.
Yeah, the scores didn't come from just specifically frees, specifically one man, or whether it be Conor Cooney from the frees instead or Conor Whelan in his corner. They came from kind of all over the pitch, but it was the manner in which they developed the scores that I was really impressed with. They moved the ball very well, and if you go back to the first 10 minutes when they went 6-1 down, I just think that Galway, like, obviously when a team plans a setup that they do a game plan for an opposition, you can never put that into practice until the first 10 minutes. You never know if it's going to work, if it's going to go arseways in the until the first 5-10 minutes. And then I just think Galway were just kind of adjusting, you know what I mean? And they were struggling to get into positions. After that, then they got into their stride, and they did exactly as you said. They got themselves into really good positions, and they got shooters on the ball. Like, I know Ronan Glennon shoots very well. Tom Monaghan, he had a very confident display, I'd say, and like still left a couple behind him. Conor Cooney didn't do much from open play, but he was getting on the ball and I suppose slinging to the lads beside him. David Burke, I thought, was excellent. I thought we got on the world of the ball, set up an awful lot, linked the play very well, and then you had our half back line who were doing a great job. So you were saying everything was pointing towards a solid performance to kind of set us on the right way. And when we started off the second half, we hit 1-2 without reply. That doesn't happen in Limerick. That's a rarity, that where you get them for 1-2. It's rare that they actually concede 3. They never concede 4 scores in a row. So they always kind of nullify that. So that was positive. And look, I'm here looking at Tom Monaghan 4 points. I wish he got 5. Colm Mannion got 4. I wish he got 6. Do you know what I mean? But look, not everyone's going to score everything. Do you know what I mean? And an error can be classed as a wide as well, or a wide can be classed as an error. So I can't be pointing at lads and say, we should have got better score efficiency. Look, shit happens, right? From where I stand right now, and I know hindsight is a different story, but I'm just really good. I'm really happy from one sense that the guys put in the performance, the type of performance they did, and put it up to Limerick in the manner they did, because an awful lot of people were doubting them, And I tell you this for sure as well, there wasn't an awful lot of people in Galway that gave them actual genuine hope. You know, it was pub talk that, oh yeah, we might have a shot, but there was a lot of people that were saying we're an awful bother here. Do you know what I mean? So I'm for the guys that put up the performance they did, kudos to those.
Well, Paul, Ronan Glennon had another point for 2 minutes and 47 seconds. I've never known a Hawkeye decision to take that long to actually overturn a score.
Yeah. And you know there were so many calls there, and there was Hawkeye had a big role in this game. Conor Whelan there in the first half, he had another one there that I think, of a day I don't think many people would have argued if the umpire just put the hand up and said, yeah, that's over the bar. So there was a lot. Hawkeye played a huge factor in, and that's what it's there for as well. But that length of time, it can take this thing out of it and can play certainly into Limerick's hands in terms of if Galway have their backs up, take this thing out of the game a small bit. The longer it takes there, you can get your house back in order. But it was a long bit of time there for Ronan Glennon's one to come back one way or another.
Why have we umpires? Why do we have umpires? Do you know, why do we use Hawkeye 5 times a game for the simplest scores? Can I just say, the umpires yesterday, their position was absolutely shite. They're on the worst angles possible looking for points. Do you know what I mean? So if you're going to have umpires like that, don't use them at all, just use Hawkeye. Sorry, rant over.
Well,
had to get that out there.
Well, Skehill, on the Glennon thing, right, was chatting to Mickey Quinlivan on GA Late Night last night, and he was making the point that in some ways it's better that the play proceeds and Hawkeye has a look, as happened yesterday, as opposed to sometimes he had noticed long stoppages, particularly at Semple Stadium, where it can kill the flow of a game entirely when it goes to Hawkeye and you're waiting on the pitch and going cold while waiting for a decision to be made. But in this case, where it seems like a point is up there for a while, and next thing it gets pulled down, that is a hell of a momentum swinger for you on the pitch if you think that point was there, but it's taken away nearly 3 minutes later.
It was a killer. It's like the guy who was monitoring Hawkeye tipped off, went down to the toilet, came back and the screen is flashing. Oh shit, he says. That's what it felt like. 3 minutes had passed and it took a point off us. Now I will say, listen to me, if I took it off Limerick I wouldn't be complaining here, but it's just the way the game petered out. But look, it was too long, and if you talk about Thurles or talk about the Gaelic grounds, it's far too long. But I will say Hawkeye is terribly important when you consider the margins that it can close or it can provide. It's extremely important. I think it's a great thing that's brought into the GEA. But I know I have to go back to the umpires. You can understand football. I get football. Football is very hard to track, let's say, from some of the scores there, some of the points they shoot. But Lord God, some of the positions that the umpires took up, especially on the Hill 16 side, fuck's sake. I'm sorry now to rant, but they were 10 yards away from the post and in the completely wrong angle. You're like, what are you doing? Who's teaching these guys? Sorry, I'm just okay. I'm a bit on edge today. Okay,
here's the platform for you to unload. While we're
I'm sorry.
The Galway section to start. Paul, to give Limerick their credit, they find solutions again, and in this case, Gerard Hegarty probably didn't have his best game. Cian Lynch came on, definitely didn't look like he's 100% back to speed yet. Again, Peter Casey didn't have the impact off the bench that we saw from David Reidy, which we can probably talk about as well. But Kyle Hayes steps up and had a remarkably good game yesterday, and they just seemed to find solutions. Even when they didn't play at their normal top level yesterday, they were still able to eke out the result.
Yeah, and I thought the substitutions were remarkable in many ways from Limerick. You see Tom Morrissey and Gerard Hegarty coming off. If you were to say that, that they weren't coming off for injuries, prior to the game, you're thinking, well, geez, Galway are after obviously getting a handle of these lads, which they did in fairness to them, but they just weren't on ball. But yeah, Kyle Hayes really got on ball, and particularly, the last one obviously was highlighted that he came back, he took up a very defensive position before the free was taken after Reidy was fouled. He went back, and obviously thinking, right, this ball is going to go over the bar, we need to defend this from a goal, fair enough. But yeah, he got on vital ball at really important times. I think it was always going to be hard for Cian Lynch to come straight back into an All-Ireland semi-final, and as good as he is, and just find himself on ball, that's very hard for a player to get back into that. He's been out for quite a while. I'm surprised that Peter Casey came on, because I just thought with a cruciate injury, obviously he's got a lot of work done in let's say inside behind closed doors with Limerick, but again, it's a fair testament to the man that they put them on in the semi-final as his first match back for Limerick after doing a cruciate. So look, they kind of rolled the dice with one or two lads in the hope to get on ball. Cian Lynch did get on one or two balls. I think he got on one ball anyway. And others didn't gain traction. But Reidy's introduction, that was inspired. And when you look back, you only need one or two of those introductions to really work. But taking off 4 your starting forwards, it's a fair statement to make. But it worked for him, and those are the big calls that have to be made. And I give credit to Kylie and Kinnerk that they obviously made the calls. It wasn't about reputations, it was about who was getting on the ball at the time of the game and what switches would suit the game best. And when you look back and you see where Reidy actually started picking up ball, he came really deep looking for the ball and then kind of just straight up through the middle of Galway. So he just brought something a little bit different that maybe wasn't overly happening during the game, that maybe one or two other players weren't providing, maybe a few other players were sitting further up the pitch, but he got on ball, he got 3 points, really important. And huge calls to be made, but I'm sure, it's great for the Limerick fans and Limerick team as well to see now that bubble has burst. Now Cian Lynch is back on the pitch, Peter Casey's back there as well, so the starting 15 for Limerick the next day could be very interesting.
Paul, when it comes to Reidy, we were talking to Joe Quaid about him last week about the season he had playing Christy Ring hurling with Kildare. Here we are now where he becomes such an important impact sub for this Limerick team. I think I was reading earlier, in the last 12 games that he's been sprung from the bench, he has scored on 10 of those occasions. And in the case of yesterday, he puts over 3 points and he won a free late on in the game, which led to a score too. So he's got a direct contribution in 4 points at a time when the game is very much in the balance. That's incredibly helpful to be able to bring that off your bench.
Yeah, it's hugely helpful, and just when you know a player is going to be able to get on ball, he's going to be involved, he's not going to find himself lost or he's trying to find his feet. He had a window there to come on and have an impact, and he had a huge impact. And it's tough, to find your role in that forward line for Limerick is very tough. And even the next day it's going to be tougher again because you have 2 more players that are going to enter into that equation. But in fairness, it's brilliant for Limerick if Reidy is to be on the bench, that they know if they call on him, he will have an impact most likely on the game. He's indicated in every single game really that when he comes on he has an impact, and at really important times, like an All-Ireland semi-final, it's different from coming on in the semi-final of a league or something like that. Like, he came on in a really important game. There were, a grain of rice would have tipped the balance here, and he came on, like you said, it was involved in 4 scores, scored 3, really important free at the end, and the free as well in particular, got fouled for a ball and allowed Limerick just to kind of calm it down a small bit, restructure. And that was really, I suppose, something that Limerick ideally want. That they want a little period where they can just settle the ship and, I suppose, stop Galway coming back at them. And they'll be delighted at his performance when he came on. So when Limerick in an All-Ireland final now, they have a wealth of lads that they can play, that they can start, but knowing that you have even more lads come off the bench that will have an impact on the game, particularly like Reidy, it's huge for Limerick.
James, I'll give you first shout on the questions we've got in around Cian Lynch. Firstly, Brendan Mulcahy's point. Was it the pace of the game when he came on, or did Cian Lynch not look right when he came on during the game? What was your take on Lynch's impact, or maybe lack of impact in the game first?
That's a small bit unfair to say he didn't look right. We're asking him. We spoke last week about the pitch, getting to the pitch of a game, and when you have players, that's why when Paul said about the Peter Casey one, this makes more sense. When you have lads who came through, let's say, if it's given campaign onto a league, into the first start of the championship and so on, they're getting to the pitch of it all the time. And so if they have a small injury, they can stay at the pitch. But like from Peter Casey's perspective, he had a long way to go, so I was surprised to see him come on. Cian Lynch, I just think it's the nature of the game. Like, you can't expect absolute fireworks off the man. You can't expect him to pick up his All-Ireland form, let's say, from the Cork game 10 months ago, straight into the game the last day, and get to the pitch of the game immediately. He's probably played some training games, some in-house games. That'll be at a certain level, a certain percentage, but nothing will replicate the heat of championship in the stressful environment like he had yesterday. So, I don't think it's a bit. I just think it's a small bit of sharpness. That's all. I think the next day he'll be better, and if I know that the next day is the last day, but if the day after that he gets better and so on. I just think it's repetition. When you get to this stage of the championship, and the more time you get, minutes you get, repetition at a top level competition, top level opposition like that, the more you'll thrive. That's it. It was just a question. It was just a situation whereby Cian has been out, didn't get to the pitch of the game. That's all.
Does he come on a bit for the extra 2-week break? I mean, there's probably an argument to say maybe in years gone by it might have suited Limerick better with these players coming back to have a longer break between the semi-final and the final. But do you expect Lynch to be in kind of top condition for the final now?
I certainly expect him to come off yesterday feeling better. I wonder would he have tested the injury as much as yesterday, because again yesterday is full exertion. You're operating at a level that can be classified as 100% of your effort. So I think even for him to have confidence to know that the injury is healed, that he's 100% right from a physical perspective, and when you can park the physical side of it, you can then focus on just the sharpness, the mental side of it. So yeah, I expect him to be better. Like, I watched him very, very closely in the warm-up because he was down kind of where I was, and he was moving very freely, touches were good. So I just think another couple of weeks for that man, and he'd be like, we're talking about again one of the best hurler in the country, one of the best we've seen. So I for one definitely won't question him. I'd be backing him to be starting the Ireland final and to produce a good performance.
Paul, a follow-up to that then would be Cian Lynch and the role he's likely to play in the final. There's an argument maybe to be had that you keep Kyle Hayes in the half-forward line around the number 11 position and bring Cian Lynch back out to midfield. Is that something that Kylie might consider?
Yeah, absolutely. He might consider it because, again, you want, when we talked individually of Kyle Hayes, where do you play him? For me, anyway, you play him further out the pitch. I don't like seeing Kyle Hayes in at full forward. I like seeing Kyle Hayes running onto ball. I like seeing him in around the half back line coming forward. I don't see we'll see him back as far as the half back line. But certainly, I think there's a better chance of Cian Lynch dropping into midfield and Kyle Hayes starting at centre forward. I think what Limerick will look at will be more along the lines of, like Richie Reid got on 24 possessions there over the weekend. Not likely to get on 24 now against Limerick, but similar enough to Pádraig Welch, let's say, going in to potentially mark John Conlon. You nearly want to distract the centre back by having someone so dangerous there and so influential that potentially they'll be so preoccupied with keeping an eye on him that maybe they won't get on as many balls. So Cian Lynch for me is that player. Not to say Kyle Hayes isn't, but Cian Lynch is well able to find himself on ball. He's the lad that pulls the strings for that Limerick forward line and pops passes off for other lads to score and pops up with his own few scores. Kyle Hayes kind of, I suppose, gets more involved, comes on, gets his own ball and tries to take on his own score. He's a bit more of a, I suppose, dynamic player that way. So I just think if Cian Lynch serves a few different purposes playing centre forward, but he can do that from midfield as well. So it's a hard one to call, but why you take either the two lads out of midfield with Limerick, I don't see why, because they get through an enormous amount of work as well. So I think if Cian Lynch does play, and I think he will start the final, I think they do start him at centre forward. I think they leave the midfield where it is, and I think they maybe move around Kyle Hayes. I think they might, unfortunately, the likes of Graham Mulcahy might lose out. He seems like the likely lad who might lose out. And they might start Kyle Hayes in corner forward and then tell him, listen, you go and hurl where you want to hurl. Similar enough to like what Brian would have said to Owen Larkin years ago. Go where you want to go. You're an intelligent player. Fire away. And I think that's the role Kyle Hayes might get. And I might just, again, ask a question of the Kilkenny cornerbacks that, do you go with him? Do you stay? You kind of have to go with him. So I think that's what they'll do, as opposed to try and fit Kyle Hayes somewhere into or Cian Lynch into a midfield area. I just think you drop Cian Lynch back in centre forward and then give a role then to Kyle Hayes and maybe roaming out from corner forward.
Skehill, where would you be deploying him then?
I don't disagree with Murph at all. I do the exact same thing. Kyle Hayes does a couple of things. He is a supreme athlete. Like, if you watch the strides of him, like, he's like a horse, the way he moves so fast, and he's got great skills. So he can pop up in areas, he can shoot, he can run at you. So I would deploy him in an area wherever he feels free. I do the same thing. I'd put 15 on his back and say, just go wherever you want. Stay inside, let's say our own 45 outside, and do what you want, and then leave Gallen and Flanagan inside. And it just poses a question also to Kilkenny, who goes on Hayes? Does Mikey Butler go on Hayes? Does Mikey Butler go on Lynch? Does he go on Gallen? Again, we question the matchups. Like Mikey Butler, I know, did a great job in Kelly again, but Hayes, he's a fair animal now. He's hard to stop. So I agree with Murph there. Unfortunately for Mulcahy, he does nothing wrong. He works fierce well. He fits well in their system, the Limerick system. Like, they're not a worse system because he's playing. It's just that you can't leave out Cian Lynch for reasons that we stated a number of times. And then Kyle Hayes, I think the backs unit is well set, so there's no reason to disrupt that because they've got a really good unit there, so leave it alone. And then, as Murph said, the midfield is looking good too, so just put Kyle Hayes wherever he wants to go, and unfortunately Mullen has to drop out.
Well, look, on Mikey Butler, tweet of the weekend that I saw came from Colin Delaney, who said that Tony Kelly probably woke up with Mikey Butler in the bed beside him on Sunday morning. Such was the job that he did him on Saturday at Croke Park. Murph, to give you credit, you called it. You said that Mikey Butler was going to follow Tony Kelly around. A complete and utter lockdown job. And Clare's most important player struggled to get into the game. But anytime the ball came near him, Mikey Butler was right there.
Yeah. I mean, I tipped him to mark him, but I gave him the leeway of that Tony Kelly had possibly scored 3 points from play or 4 points, and that's a good job. But to hold him completely scoreless, never mind that, Mikey Butler went up right corner forward at one stage and had a pop at a point, and it was right behind it where it was, and he wasn't far away from it. So I said if he came out of it scoring a point as well, it would have been remarkable. But yeah, just an incredible job. And for me, it's a big claim, but I was thinking about it coming out, and I know I've been, I suppose, praising Mikey Butler, but I came away from Croke Park the other day going, how many teams have tried to deploy one player on Tony Kelly and just keep nullify him, and no team has managed it? And Kilkenny have that player on Mikey Butler. For me, I think at the moment the full back line, if you were going picking an all-star team, is one of the hardest at the moment with the calibre of players there, particularly because you have Sean Finn and these lads. Now, okay, Rory Hayes over the last while has drifted a small bit from his form at the start of the year, but in terms of individual players at the moment, Mikey Butler is there with Sean Finn for me in terms of if you're picking an all-star team, how do you leave out the man that kept a player that was in form for Hurler of the Year? One game nearly nullifies it, and just an incredible performance. I was walking away saying that fella could be the right cornerback for the all-star team this year. Now again, the final will determine a lot, but look, as a standalone performance, it was absolutely remarkable. And it was a remarkable platform as well for Kilkenny to go forward. I think Kilkenny would have won this game anyway, even if Tony Kelly popped up with 4 or 5 points. That was just the nature of the game. But for Mikey Butler in his debut season to go out and put in that performance against Tony Kelly was just, in fairness, he deserves all the credit, and he's getting all the credit at the moment. It was a great performance.
Yeah, James, 117 to 6 points was at half time for Kilkenny in that game. It was dead by the break, thanks to Keown's goal just before half time too. But I think probably for those who are maybe scratching their head from a Clare perspective about the weekend, Ronan Holleran probably sums it up in his question here. Why did Clare continue to go long over and over and over again? This to me seemed like craziness. Like, Clare have been able to mix it up quite a bit during the year. They like to run the ball between the lines. Against a Kilkenny team who probably relish high ball coming in, like Hugh Lawler came out with so much ball at the weekend. Yeah. Why did Clare continue to go so direct when it wasn't working?
Oh, sure. Like, high ball in Kilkenny for backline is like milk to a cat. You know, like, you'd wonder why. Okay, try it for the first few minutes. And remember I was saying last week, go in 10-minute intervals. Try it for the first 2 minutes. If it doesn't work, right, fine, scratch that, go to plan B. But they kept at it and at it and at it. And we talk about statistics, and I was saying, if you look at all the, this is the answer to your question now, look at all the statistics and just okay, leave out the score, right? But all the numbers like the Clare developed, very good, like very good puck out retention, very good turnover retention, very low number of frees conceded, an awful lot of shots, right? But what stats don't measure, and this is the reason why I think that, is leadership, like leadership and cohesiveness. They're the two words I'm thinking of, and you can't. It's hard to actually quantify the loss of John Conlon for a number of reasons, right? But leadership specifically, like if you've got a Declan Hannon there, or a Pádraig Mannion, or a TJ Reid, that game plan has changed after 10 minutes. Like, there's no lad pumping that ball over and over and over again, trying to expect a different. That's insanity. That's trying to do the same thing over and trying to expect a different result. And just Kilkenny lapped it up. Like, we talk about Galway's shot range or shot efficiency. Clare did 38%. Like, that must be, I mean this respectfully now, that must be one of the lowest efficiency rates for scoring ever in the semi-final. And
so much of that came down, James, to poor shot selection too. Even very early in the game, they were just shooting from everywhere. From everywhere,
and I was wondering why are they going. I wrote down a question in my notes. Why are Clare going away from what they produced all year? They produced a high energy running game with lads running left, right, and centre. Their half back line attacking, energy all over the place. Like, anyone could shoot up and score from numbers 5 to 12 on their back, and that just didn't seem to happen at all. Now, that's credit goes to Kilkenny also, but if I'm assessing specifically Clare's performance, I'm like, adaptability. They didn't adapt one bit at all. Even the subs that came in, they kept shooting from the most ridiculous ranges, even when there was 10, 11 points in the difference. And that just sucks the life out of a team. And it sucks. I'm a big fan of Brian Owen. I keep saying that, and I'm a big fan of his management team also. But I have to wonder, why wasn't the message gone onto the pitch to stop applying that type of game plan? Go to a different one. Go shorter. Bring out Tony Kelly. We've seen Tony Kelly in the 2 games against Limerick all over the place, where he'd pop up and he's on 21, he's on 45, etc. That didn't happen, the last day. It's like he was banished to the right corner forward position, let's say, or even not to pass the Kilkenny 45. So I'm just wondering, why did they go away so much from what they produced all year that got them to the position they're in, and actually put them into the favourites tag for this game? And they'll be ruined that now big time. But to answer your question, it's one word: leadership. Whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch, that's why they kept doing what they were doing.
Dare I suggest, Murph, that within the game too, Adrian Mullen produced the type of performance that we probably would have expected from Tony Kelly, where he was all action, he was very efficient with his shooting, he was turning over the ball continually, hooks and blocks. Like, I was so impressed with how he played. The Ballyhale players played well in general. It was a Ballyhale driven, probably midfield and forward line, but Adrian Mullen was incredible.
Yeah, he was incredible, and what typified his performance for me was, in the first half there, he picked up an ankle injury at some stage. Straight away he was back up, TJ caught a ball, popped it off to him. I think it was his 3rd point maybe at that stage. But towards the end, he seemed to be over on the right hand side for most of the first half, and he was up and down that channel. I think the last ball he held in his hand in the first half was in the left corner back position. He came running down, saw the danger, was tracking back, the ball broke out into the left corner back position, took a hand pass and worked the ball back up the pitch. And I was just baffled, like, because I was sitting there with Oisin Langan and I was going, he was out of right half forward a minute ago, like, and now he's here. He just seems to be, like, he's playing with so much freedom at the moment. I think Brian understands that as well, that you give you give the likes of Adrian Mullen a bit of direction, but let him hurl instinctively when he gets onto the pitch, because that's what he does best. He just reads the game so well. But every so often these players kind of come along that they're brilliant at scoring and getting their few points in a game. But then you maybe can question them tracking back and doing a few different things. Adrian Mullen, just whether you have the ball or whether you don't have the ball, he's involved. He just gets around the pitch, gets in a little flick, gets in a hook, and then goes, right, how can I support this play? Gets up, and he just looks so at ease moving around the pitch. But 5 points was just, that's a savage performance. From a lad who started at midfield but kind of seemed like he was in around half forward for quite a bit of it. He had a great performance, and all the Ballyhale lads, really, I think it was about 25 minutes in, I think only one person other than a Ballyhale player had scored at that stage. There was a great cohesiveness there, whether it was chance or whatever it was, I don't know, but they had a big influence in the first half. But no, for me, Adrian Mullen, after, again, I think he just brought it to a new level for his own individual performances. This was a landmark one for Adrian, and he's just in great form. And for all Kilkenny supporters at the moment, it's brilliant to have another fella there that consistently day in day out will just put into these performances.
And it's Kilkenny performances go, Murph. Skehill tweeted at half time to say the demolition that Kilkenny put in was right up there probably with any of their performances. This has to rank right up there with anything that's happened in the Cody era, that first half performance.
Yeah, it was again incredible performance. Look, again, we have to talk about the elephant in the room here. Like, just Clare weren't at the races either. Like, Kilkenny can only play what's in front of them, but I think whatever flicker of a chance Clare had in terms of a little bit of a flame that might have been burning there in the forward line, like, Kilkenny just stifled them out. Kilkenny's energy in defence was enormous. They just fought so hard for every ball. You think of Richie Reid going back, getting a block in, and they turn over the ball, goes up the other end, Mossy Keoghan gets a goal. What's his name? Hugh Lawler came out, like that catch from Hugh Lawler where he just seemed to rise above everyone, caught it and drove out. Like, no more than Clare playing that long ball in, and never mind the Kilkenny player winning it. When a Kilkenny player comes out with a ball like that, it lifts the whole team, that you come out and you catch a ball and drive the whole thing on. But their defence I just thought were really good, and something we talked about the Wexford match a few weeks ago and how they only played one-dimensionally. When you look at how they performed at the weekend, every time they got a ball, they were so calm on it. They popped it out. Even if there was a Clare person coming in, they'd nearly bring it into contact and pop the ball out around the Clare player. And then Paddy Deegan might get it. He'll look up the line, and he was taking his time on the ball. Have a look. Might have someone off the shoulder. Pops it again. There always seemed to be a player there that Kilkenny could use. But then likewise, they changed it up. They struck a few long balls in because they kept the Clare team honest. Clare had to come up. They had to go and tackle them because Kilkenny were running the ball. But then after a few times of running the ball, they'd strike one long because all the space was inside in the Clare backline, because they just kept Clare so honest all over the pitch. So as a performances go, it was an incredible performance. Nobody could have called something like that. I think it was 14 points at half time in the difference. Nobody could have called that. And a part of that was down to Clare's performance. But you have to give credit to Kilkenny. They were just so savage. They were so ruthless. Yeah,
they're ravenous. If you look at like even at the other match there, when Limerick went 6 points to 1 up against Galway, there's potential there every so often for Limerick maybe just to ease off the gas a little bit. Now, in a very small bit, and it still takes a team to come back into it. But Kilkenny didn't wait to see what Clare were doing at any stage here. They just barreled through Clare, and like even at that, the last minute of the first half, where Mossy Keoghan is still going for goal. Kilkenny are going for goal at this stage, and they're up by 11 points. Like, it was just the attitude of them. They didn't care what the scoreboard was. It was just, next ball, what are we doing? Next ball, we're going again. So that's what I was so delighted with, and it was just, it was just a savage performance all around from Kilkenny.
James, it seemed like Kilkenny are maybe just getting that evolution right. I think that's what Pádraig Mark said on OTB AM about this. He feels like they've been evolving, particularly as the year has gone on. The short game didn't exactly click with some of the main players missing when we go back to the game against Tipperary at Semple Stadium. A very direct approach against Wexford didn't quite work. But the last couple of games, Kilkenny are starting to just settle a little bit. It seems that they've got the team set as a 15, and the style now has a bit of variety to it. And maybe that was just basically a work in progress we were looking at earlier this year.
Yeah, I do agree. And to be honest, I would have said probably Kilkenny would have been the last of the big teams to kind of formulate that game plan where they can go short and they can go long. But now they've nailed it. It looks like they've nailed it now. Certainly last Saturday, all evidence points to them that they had it down to a T. And even from a panel perspective, whoever comes in contributes very well. Case in point, Cian Kenny, Wally Walsh. First of all, bringing on Wally Walsh just after Martin got the goal and taking them off. That wouldn't happen in any other county. I guarantee you, that wouldn't happen in any other county. Wally Walsh would not be coming on there after a man scores a goal. But alas, it happens in the Cody, the camp, let's say. So Wally comes on, takes a great pull, and the next thing, Cian Kinney is going forward. I just think they've mixed it well. In terms of their attitude, it's very hard for me to, and how I'm going to say this, but their one-to-one mentality is deadly, if that makes sense. Like, so it's like a willingness, like it's me versus you, and I'm going to beat you. And I don't know how you measure that, probably just by winning the ball, obviously, but like, that was just the word I used more for ravenous, the backs, Jesus. And then when they win the ball, the go forward attitude, like twice Hugh Lawler passed out Richie Reid on the Hogan side, and Richie Reid gave him the ball. This is your full back, but he passed him out. So that was the go forward attitude that Kilkenny had adapted. After the one-to-one mentality of winning the ball, whether it be high or low, just ravenous like. And I love these clips that your man puts up. What's his name? Ray Boyne. Ray Boyne puts up these clips at the odd time. They're great, like, and they're super. But he did like a collage of clips whereby the Kilkenny defence are defeating the Clare forwards, and it's all whether on the ground, and it's just bodies in, get the ball, and they're all turned and gone the same direction. You know, it's great to see from a management perspective, from a supporter perspective, an ex-player. It's what you want off your team, and that all culminates into your question, like, Will, they have now adapted to the modern contemporary style of hurling, if you want to call it that, and they can mix the long, as we've seen, flipping TJ pulling ball out of the sky all day long, and they can go short, and that's what you're on about. That's all you want a team to do, is to keep the opposition honest. So you don't want to be one-dimensional again, the Wexford game, whereby they're expecting, they know what you're going to do. Clare had no answer. They didn't know what Kilkenny were going to do the last day. If they went short, it was gone long. If they went long, it was gone short, and so on. Just, it was a very, very all-round performance, and clean sheet from the backs. No real trouble back there. Cleaned out the Clare forwards. So I think there's an awful lot to be happy with. There's an awful lot to be happy with from a Kilkenny perspective.
Well, given that Canning is retired, Callan was out with injury this year, TJ Reid has been representing the class of 87 and representing them very well this season, Murphy.
88.
Is it 88 for him?
No, he's 87. He's
December. He's 35. He's
35 later this year, yeah.
Yeah, he's December 87.
Yeah, so he's into his 35th year. Keeps himself obviously in very good nick because he's got his own gym, which probably helps along the way.
Yeah.
Not too many 35-year-olds put in a performance.
Probably helps, yeah.
Probably helps. Put in a performance like he did at the weekend. Quite aside from how well he hit his frees, which were helpful too, TJ Reid was superb. Yeah,
he was it's just incredible the performances he puts in, and like you said, a lot of that is a testament to the man. Like, he's not this genetic freak in the ways of that his body just stays maintained itself. He puts in a lot of work in terms of keeping himself on the road, keeping himself going. Like, he's so physically fit, so strong, he's so mobile. He's just he's kept himself in such great condition, which that takes years. You can't just decide when you're 33, oh wait, I actually have to look after myself here. It's been years and years of work for TJ to do that. I think Christy O'Connor had it in an article there today, which I found incredible, that out of TJ taking 20 frees from the last, I think from the Leinster final and the semi-final, he scored 19 out of 20, but the 20th one was the one where Hawkeye returned no data. Like, so it could have even been 20 out of 20. Like, from frees, that's remarkable. And when you see, we were talking about the Galway match there, and Conor Cooney on frees, and Tony Kelly maybe hitting a few, and to have a free taker that stepping in, that's probably going to hit 10 out of 10, probably going to hit 15, whatever it's going to be, that's huge for Kilkenny. But then you see the threat he still poses. I think he plucked 3 fairly significant balls out of the sky the other day, and just again, like you said, Ray Boyne had him up. A few of the slow motions are just, the man he's marking is all over him. He just keeps the eye on the ball the whole way. All he needs is room enough for his hand to get to it, and that's it. And the score he set up for Adrian Mullen as well, again, just plucking the ball from the sky. But you look at the score he got then when Owen Murphy saved it. I think it was around the 65th or so minute. Owen Murphy saved it, Kilkenny worked up the pitch. I think Billy Ryan gets it, and TJ has drifted. We just talk about these players who just drift, and their man isn't looking at them, do a loop and kind of a run, ask a question, and come back at an angle that by the time your player has copped you, you're now running at an angle that he has to change the direction and change his own momentum. It's too late then. He just caught the ball, loads of space, popped it over. It was just such a incredible performance. And the thing about him as well, if you look back at one or two of the scores, when he gets the ball, a lot of players actually stand off him because they're afraid when they commit to him that he'll sidestep you, or he'll just go around you, or he'll push you, or he'll create a bit of space. So you actually see TJ has a second to just stand, have a little look, see what he's going to do, and he's earned that extra yard because his players know he's so dangerous. But look, like you said, 35 later this year, very few lads in this day and age would be capable of putting in those 70-minute performances like TJ.
Yeah. James Skehill, this one comes to you from Paul Barry 1212. Can Skehill now legitimately even leave Tony Kelly out of his top 5 after he pulled his Invisible Man act on Saturday?
I was right all along, wasn't it?
The sage here who knew from the start. Go on.
Is this like the stop clock being right twice a day? Is it like he just had to eventually come full circle?
No. One swallow doesn't make a summer, and certainly one bad performance does not discount what Tony Kelly has produced all summer. Not an ocean. He's been brilliant. He'll still get his All-Star. I don't think he'll get his Hurler of the Year, to be honest. But he's still definitely a top player. One bad performance. Again, look at like Murphy, you touched on earlier on. Garrett Hegarty, Hurler of the Year previous to say taking off yesterday after scoring a point. These things happen. Good players, great players have the odd bad performance. Like TJ had one against Galway earlier on in the group game. Do you know what I mean? Look what he produced on Saturday. So listen to me. That's I cannot say Tony Kelly is not in my top 5 for that reason. He deserves to be there.
Not that he needs our defending here, but the other thing about this as well, Paul, is that it didn't click for any of the Clare forwards. They got 1 point from play from their starting inside forward line. Both Galvin and Duggan got the hook reasonably early within the game. A lot of that's down to delivery that was coming in, but really none of the Clare forwards had a great game. No,
none of them had a great game. And look, Tony Kelly's just one of these players that he's going to be highlighted any day he goes out. A marginal poor performance will be highlighted even more with Tony Kelly. It didn't click for any of the forwards. Like Shane O'Donnell came away with 4 points all the same, like, which in fairness, like, you kind of forget because he was just kind of drifting through the game, and he propped up with I think the last 3 in the second half. Game was kind of over. But no, it didn't click for any of them. The whole system just didn't work. The Clare forwards were working as individuals, really, and that's not simple to do. And when Tony Kelly is being man-marked by Mikey Butler, who was just completely up for it, Mikey Butler had one job: stop Tony Kelly playing. It's very hard for Tony Kelly when he's not being fed any sort of good ball, when he has no real platform to work off. So I completely agree with James there. It's one game. It's just unfortunate for Tony Kelly. This is the last game he plays this year, so that's a little bit what people remember. But I'd agree. You look at nearly any other player to a man this year, they've all had games where they're a little bit off the boil, whether it's in the league, whether it's in the round robin phase, whatever. But they're forgotten about if you get to play 1 or 2 more games. But like Tony Kelly would be in my top 5 absolutely. And this performance from the Clare forwards, nobody else covered themselves in glory either. So you can't be particularly hard on Tony Kelly for this.
James, what about this achievement for Brian Cody then? Because we asked Murph continually about Cody, so let's get your take on it. 17 All-Ireland finals, could potentially lift the Liam McCarthy as a manager for the 12th time if they were to win in 2 weeks' time. He's now managed a father and a son as well. Which just goes to show how long his tenure is.
I'm sick of him. A father and a son, remind me.
Yeah, DJ Carey's son.
Oh, and Mikey here, yeah. I think you could go around the country and go to every hurling county in the place, and there wouldn't be enough words or people come together to kind of honour what he's done in the game. And I think John Kiley said it in his interview after the game yesterday that it'll never be surpassed, but it won't even be matched. It can't be matched. It's a great record. It's a testament to his longevity and also the players he's had a hand in producing and what they've produced themselves on the pitch. That's a big thing. So he didn't do it by himself. I'll put it that way. He did it with great people around him on and off the pitch. But credit to him. Look at, and I think, and they're in with a great shout. Like they've produced a performance that say that was definitely the performance of the weekend. So they've no reason. And Jackie said it during the week as well. They won't fear Limerick at all. Let's say, and they'll bring the Kilkenny attitude, which is I'd say a big reason why he's going to be 17th in Ireland.
And if they win, Skehill, is this the most impressive victory of his tenure?
That's a good question. So the first 1 or 2 All-Irelands, you leave them alone aside. Probably from when you talk about meaningful to him, he'd probably point back to the first one or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But is this the most impressive? It has to be. It has to be, because if you go back at the start of the year, I don't think anybody, myself inclusive, would have had them in the top 4 or 5. You know what I mean? So if they come through Leinster when I didn't have them as favourites, and then they come through a Clare semi-final when I didn't have them as favourites, and they go through the final where I don't put them as favourites and beat Limerick, that would be probably, in my view, their best All-Ireland ever. I won't say their hardest earned, but their best production I think would have been this year.
Paul, would you agree with that? I mean, 2015 was the last time that Kilkenny have won the All-Ireland Championship. 2019 was kind of towards part of the rebuild from those who had retired after that team. Then there's been new players filtered in over the last 3 seasons too, so it's been very much in flux since then. Is that right up there for everything that Cody has done if they win in 2 weeks?
Yeah, it probably is. Well, it has to be up there anyway, whether it's his his greatest one or not, you'd have to ask him that. But certainly,
okay, hang on a second now. I've answered the question as why it would be his greatest one. You tell me why it wouldn't be. What's the other one?
What's the other one? Well, no, like I'd be leaning more towards that it is. That's if
I was hoping you'd keep the go against me.
No. Jeez, not. No, if you let me finish my sentence, again. No, I'd agree with you. Like I was just going to say, even from the round robin phase now, like, you know, having come through a lot of matches, you know, really use a full panel, and the matches coming thick and fast, adjusting your game, not a lot of time to adjust your game. Let's say the Wexford match, you know, not a lot of time to turn around and have your ship in order for the Galway match. After the Galway match, then, like, you know, again, still people were asking a few questions over them, go in against a hotly tipped Clare team and pulverise them, and now go into the All-Ireland final still tipping away as underdogs, despite what John Kiley was kind of saying after the game. He was trying his best, even though they're going for 3 in a row, to paint Kilkenny as the favourites. But
it was complete and utter Yarra Murph. I was listening to him off the ball on the way home.
I enjoyed it, to be honest. I thought it was brilliant, because I'd say he must have been kind of laughing. Like, you can't go for 3 in a row and try and paint the other team as the favourites.
But unbeaten in 15 games,
Yeah. But no, look, in terms of Brian's achievement, it definitely has to be up there. It probably is his greatest achievement. But the reason I kind of hesitate to say it is because my stance on this team is that this is a really good team, and the problem with teams that have went before it is that because there was so many abundance of medals in that team, I think people have been harsher on this team in terms of saying, are they a good team? Has he got the players? He does have the players to win an All-Ireland there, and this proves that he's in the region of winning an All-Ireland with this team. I would have always just disagreed with people in saying that he doesn't have the players. He does have the players, and the players are there. When you look around the pitch, the last 3 young hurlers of the year are inside the forward line, right? Granted, Cody won 2 of those. You know, you talk about TJ Reid, Pádraig Welch. You know, looking through the rest of the team there as well. Like, there's savage hurlers like Mikey Butler and Hughie Lawler putting their hands up, like Owen Murphy.
Jesus, you love Mikey Butler.
I do love him.
You love him.
No, but I'm just like, they have great players around the team, so. The reason I would say it's a great achievement is just where the modern game is at the moment, the quick turnaround, the round robin phase, all this. It is marginally tougher now at the moment, I think, to go and have a crack and win an All-Ireland. And, you know, there's a good spread in the field there as well in terms of teams that are competing. So if he does go and win it against this great Limerick team, it probably is his greatest achievement.
On the Mikey Butler point, by the way, I decided to stick up a tweet, just kind of going back to something we talked about.
I should have copyrighted that tweet as well.
You should have copyrighted, yeah. I stuck up, you know, used to carry the water and carry the hurls around for the team. And what happens when I wake up, my mentions are destroyed with Munster people primarily saying Hurley, ! Or Hurley, and it's not a hurl, you can't call it a hurl. I tell you, I've never seen that debate reopen as much. 3 of us are like Skehill. We may as well count you as a Leinster person, given Galway been in Leinster for so long. Up here, it's a hurl. It may be a hurley in Munster.
Is it hurling? Is that what it's called? Hurling?
Yeah,
it's a hurl.
Yeah, it's a hurl. Yeah. We're going to alienate a lot of people.
Like, it's not called footy ball. It's football, right? So, like, do you know what I mean? So it's a hurl.
Look, I'm happy to alienate away. Even had one guy tweet, I think it was like late on Saturday night, so he probably had a few beers. It was like, you can't host a hurling pod if you call a hurley a hurl.
No. Is there anybody in Off the Ball that could go back there over the 20 podcasts and just see whose name is mentioned more, Tony Kelly or Mikey Butler? I reckon Mikey Butler's up there.
I'm doing my best for him here. It's almost like someone has a bet on to see how many times I can mention his name.
Well, he's definitely getting the All-Star through persistence anyway.
Yes. The Paul Murphy fan club has helped his case massively. The thing about it is, Mikey Butler is from Kilkenny. I put up a quick video clip of Brian Cody a couple of years ago confirming that in Kilkenny it's called a hurl and not a hurley. I think that should probably settle the debate if we're going to argue around him being a hurl carrier for Kilkenny. But that was a bit of fun at the weekend. What wasn't fun in Kilkenny was Nolan Park yesterday as an Offaly fan. Offaly, the better team against Tipperary for 55 minutes probably during the game. Were quite comfortable, 6 points up at half time. Looked a little bit nervy as they got into those last 5 minutes, but we're 5 points up at a point when substitute Carl Robinson looks like he's in on goal. He's about to round the goalkeeper, gets a hurl thrown at him by Damien Corbett, which hits him in the helmet. He goes down. It's decided by the officials that it was just outside the penalty area as opposed to being inside it. So the punishment was a red card and a free. The free gets tipped over. But Tipperary then rally after that. It's amazing how that goal not going in was almost the winning of the game for Tipperary. They eked away at the lead, and to Tipperary's credit, Skehill, you were on the sideline with Galway in the semi-final where Tipperary produced a crazy finish to the game. They finished strongly both in normal time and in extra time against Clare in the Munster final. It was Paddy McCormick who popped over a free that time to bring the game to penalties at the Gaelic grounds in the Munster final. So I don't think it's a coincidence if a team shows that kind of resilience 3 games in a row. If you're able to do that continually, that's a sign of character within a group. But then, the one that's been talked about so much, in Offaly at least, Niall Furlong, the full forward, was back doing a bit of defending late in the game. He comes out with the ball, gets essentially tripped around the ankles, goes to ground, referee waves away his protest for a free, and Tipperary awarding a free with the next play game. The ball is put in the melting pot. Again, cleverly tapped up, and Paddy McCormick is there to swing his hurl on it. It goes into the net, very last puck of the game, and Tipperary win by 117 to 116. Be remembered probably, Murph, for the 2 decisions, though, particularly the one with Niall Furlong coming out. To me, and I hope this isn't any kind of bias coming through, because again, I have to give all credit to Tipperary for how they finished the game. That had to be a free out.
Yeah, you just have to look at it for what it was, whatever stage of the game it was in. Like that was a free out. It's tough. It's a tough way to leave it, but I couldn't see, as soon as I saw the free happening, or as soon as I saw the incident happen, I said that's a free out, game is over. And then when it just played on, it's a tough way. You don't want to take away from Tipperary's win either. Absolutely, you don't. But you'd have to feel if any other part of the game that foul happens, it's a free out. So for the fact that it hinged on that, it's a tough pill maybe to swallow for the Offaly lads this morning. That that's a lot of it where it hinged on.
Yeah, what summed it up was Slieve Namon was due to play, and it's tough for any Kilkenny groundsman to probably have to play Slieve Namon inside Nolan Park. But the Offaly Rover actually played initially before it played after the game. I think it must have been set up on the CD good to go, given the way the game was going. Maybe that sums up how the end of the game was played. But I don't know. It'll be no consolation to them now. Leo O'Connor, the Offaly manager, said after the game that he was part of a Limerick team that were 5 points up against Offaly in the 94 senior final and saw it ripped away from them. So he knows that feeling, and he's saying the main thing for them is to stay around for 20s and to build through to senior level. But an incredible occasion yesterday, James. I know you were up at Croke Park, so you were only kind of keeping an eye on it on stream or on the highlights, but 20-odd thousand people in there. It probably said a lot for having a standalone final in a different venue. Terrific standard of hurling from primarily 16 and 17-year-olds at the weekend. An incredible spectacle of a final, even if some of the talk is about the controversy at the end of it.
Yeah, and I think for the players themselves, they'll remember the occasion as much as they'll remember the result. Obviously the result hurts for some and it's great for others, but to be able to be part of a spectacle where you draw in a crowd of 27,000 people into a stadium of the like in Nolan Park, let's say, for 17-year-olds, for kids, I keep saying, it's tremendous. And I would be a critic for saying that the minors should be before the senior games. Why was that changed? But then when you look at this standalone game and it produced that kind of crowd, it's justified. But what a game! I think from Offaly's perspective, yes, they're devastated. But the word we always use in minors is development. And how many of these guys can you bring forward from this group onto the 20s? And I think Offaly can stand back and say we can potentially bring a lot of these guys here. And I know the Sunday game last night highlighted the corner forward Screeney, but I have to mention him. I just have to, because he is a silky class hurler. So when the Offaly supporters, I know they go home for devastated, as I said, right? But they're looking at the type of hurler they're producing, whether it be him or Raven or whatever. They've got guys who bode well for the future. So they need to just keep investing in them. So whatever is happening in Offaly over the last couple of years, whether it's under Michael Dignan's stewardship or it's the way they're expanding facilities or they're bringing in certain people over the teams, they're doing things right. You know what I mean? So it's just a question of keep doing it. Keep doing it, and persistence is key, and you can get back to the top, because they're doing it in both football and hurling. It has to be said. So credit to them. But like you said about the Tipperary team, that's not just coincidence. The 3 games in a row they produced what you class as the heroics team. That's a trait of a team, and that's a great trait, and that's built into them. So again, no more than Offaly's development, this is huge for Tipperary, and they've got a number of guys that they can bring forward for the next couple of years. So look, both teams, class spectacle, and credit to both.
Yeah, it's one thing, James. I don't mean to totally kind of single out individuals, but there are players in both teams who look really promising. Delaney, full forward for Tipperary, was actually really well managed yesterday, but having watched him throughout the championship, he's a serious player coming through. Screeney in hand, the 2 Offaly corner forwards should probably make it. Dan Ravenhill should probably make it at senior level, the Offaly captain, and there's a few others who'll have aspirations, the Kavanagh brothers. But Delaney, their full forward, is a serious operator. Yeah,
he is class. He rattled, I think, off memory, 6 from play against us in the semi-final. But he was, as I said, he was marshalled pretty okay. I think he got. Now I'm up to correction. He got 1 maybe 2 yesterday. So like he
double check. I think he got 1 point from play.
Was it 1? But like again, okay, regardless of score, just put that aside for the minute. Like we're talking about Tony Kelly not scoring from play, so that doesn't justify at all or even paint any kind of picture. But he is class. Delaney's deadly. But I really like. I know everyone will point to the forwards and then say like the forwards get all the credit generally because they do all the scoring. But like their number 5, Sam O'Farrell. Like from watching him in the Munster final to watching him in person below the gate grounds to watch him yesterday, albeit only the second half, excuse me. He's a class act too. Like so he's a chip off the old block and comes to Tipperary like a silky hurler, tough as well, and very skillful. Like so again, as I said to you, they've got guys all over the pitch on both sets of teams. Hand's a nice hurler too. Again, these guys have developed. They're small, they're light. You know, they've only got a bit of a frame at the moment, so they will build. They'll get into conditioning programs now, and over the next 3-4 years, they'll pack on 6-7 kilos and turn into right hurlers, get introductions into senior hurling club, and then who knows where it'll take them.
Yeah, I like again Sam O'Farrell, Kieran Foley, Adam Daly, 2 midfielders for Tipperary, really good. Offaly's fullback James Mann had a serious game on Tom Delaney, who was Tipperary's danger man going into the game. So going to be intriguing to kind of watch some of these young lads and see how they develop in the coming years. But it was good to see Adam Screeney get a bit of a big up on the Sunday game with some of the scores he took, particularly a couple over by the sideline last night were really, really good. The other thing I want to chat about, Murph, because we're going to do our massive preview of Kilkenny and Limerick, so we're keeping the powder dry a little bit about those matchups for next week.
Another roadshow, is it?
I don't know. There could well be another roadshow. Are we allowed back into Limerick after your antics falling off the chair?
I was assaulted in Limerick anyway, that's all I'll say.
Are you going to say it was Joe Quaid who pulled the chair behind you, or what happened?
I don't know, but all I'll say is my back isn't the same since.
I was saying you must have a spirit level in your elbow or something like that. The fact that just instinctively the hand just corrected itself as you were going down.
Yeah, it's an auto correction. Yeah,
spirit
exactly,
level somewhere in that arm.
And I watched back the video 100 times. And I watched you two. I have to say, you two pricks, right? And all he did, not one he gave him a hand to give me a hand up, right? He just started clapping your hands, putting your hands to your mouth, and laughing. And I said, that's fine. I thought we were all friends here.
Well, I was mid-conversation with Podge Collins and Jamie Wall, and next thing I just heard a crack. I didn't see it when it was happening. So to be fair to me, by the time I turned my head, Will was looking at you. When I turned my head, you were a spread eagle on the ground and there was just sawdust on the ground, and I was like, I don't want to know what happened. This is good enough for me.
I had every faith that Quaid was going to pick you up, because Joe Quaid was literally standing behind Skehill as you went down, as you'll see in the video. So I knew he was safe, but I just couldn't stop laughing when I saw the pint was fully intact. That's the first thing I noticed. I looked down to see if the glass had smashed, and I saw Skehill moving the pint from his left hand into his right hand, which is absolutely remarkable. If anyone didn't see the footage, by the way, it's up on the OTB Twitter if you want to have a look at it. It's
yeah, get a look at it, yeah. Get a look at it there, Will. Tell everyone to get a look at it.
It was a good night though, Skehill. I actually really enjoyed the roadshow. It was actually good chat, good crack to be had throughout the night.
Yeah, good guess. First of all, lovely venue, I have to say. And again, the whole body of the show was good. I talked to a couple of people after, and I think that the vibe was good. It was positive. There was good content, both from a kind of a seriousness analysis side to a bit of crack. So again, it bodes well for the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I'm dying to go out. We'll do another roadshow very soon indeed. The football roadshows are on over the next while, so keep an eye on the OTB Twitter, particularly the one in Kerry that's taking place later this week, ahead of Dublin and Kerry this weekend. And we'll see if we've news a bit more on the hurling very soon. Paul, I was going to ask you about Kieran Kingston though, because a couple of weeks ago it seemed that Cork had offered another term to Kieran Kingston, and then he announces pretty much straight after the semi-final last evening that he wouldn't be staying on for another term. So his 3 years were up. Effectively, he's been involved in 8 of the last 10 years, whether it's the 2 spells as a manager, a year he did as a coach, and a year he did as a selector within that period too. He's decided time for him to walk away. Doesn't seem that too many Cork people are entirely surprised, but its entire backroom team are leaving. So it's a clean sweep within Cork coming in. Were you surprised to see Kieran Kingston leave at this stage?
Well, we talked about it maybe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, where we were debating would he go or wouldn't he go. So obviously the question was up in the air there, would he or wouldn't he? But I kind of look, once these things kind of get out there and word is out that there's a hint that someone may go, I think generally they usually do after that, because it's obviously, you know, there's no smoke without fire, so potentially there's some sort of word that people in Cork presumed he was going to go. But you know, I think Kieran Kingston has done, you know, I've always liked him as a manager. I've liked him in interviews after games. I just think he's very honest kind of a manager. I think he's given a really genuine crack, and he's had to make some really hard decisions. No more than having Shane there in the team, not starting and playing him, and just, you know, being straight down the line and making calls like that. So look, getting him to an All-Ireland last year as well. I think anytime I've been critical of Cork, it's been more so, on the team, their players, in terms of, going from game to game, really good one day and then, flat the next day in terms of commitment and different things. So, but in terms of Kieran Kingston, I just, I think he has been a great manager. I'm a little bit surprised he's going all right, but I do think it was leaning that way, and there was a little bit of chat that, he's done his 3 years now. He mightn't want or feel he needs to do another year, and go to the well and go for another year with Cork. So I'm not overly surprised, because like I said, once you heard the chat was out there, you kind of, for me anyway, that indicates that, look, there's something coming down the tracks here now and the time is up and he's just going to move on. But I was surprised he did it last night. It seemed like a kind of a, sometimes managers will leave it maybe a few weeks. Maybe he's affording Cork a bit more time to kind of go out there while maybe teams aren't on the market looking for managers. I don't know, but I wasn't expecting it last night anyway, definitely not. I thought maybe after the final he might announce it, but look, it's I suppose for Cork to have a clean sweep now, it's an opportunity now again to, I suppose, press the reset button and maybe see. I saw a few names bandied around as internally who might take over, so it'll be interesting times for Cork to see what the next phase is and who steps into the breach there.
Yeah, James, the names internally, particularly Pat Mulcahy, Ben O'Connor, Noel Furlong's have mentioned too, whether it's a combination of two of the three or one, and potentially some of the others could come in as part of the management team. They're the three who are being kind of strongly mentioned currently. Mm-hmm. It would seem to me, given Cork's tradition, they stay inside, despite the fact that you've got Eddie Brennan available, you've got Davy Fitzgerald available, guys who would be external candidates for the role. It seems a truism that Cork go internal every time. Yeah,
I think from if you're bringing in a member of a backroom team to a coach, then they might range outside. But in a managerial position, there's counties like Tip and Cork that rarely, Kilkenny did. I don't know the last time Kilkenny had a manager for Cody, but they rarely go outside the county. So it'll definitely be an appointment from within. I think the Cork people would much rather that anyway themselves. There's definitely enough, expertise, experience, and there probably is a lot of willingness too when you see the squad that Cork have at the moment and the potential that they can produce to take over the job. Who takes it over? Not a clue. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know many people, beyond the names you've mentioned there. So it'll be an interesting thing to watch to see who puts their name forward, and if someone external puts their name forward. What I'm finding out now.
I'm going to give you the one last question before you get ready for your job interview with Cork, because you have to go and hurl against Ballyea in a challenge game, so we'll make sure that you get off in time for that. I'm sure, given your comments about Tony Kelly earlier, they won't try and sling a few goals past you this evening in that challenge game. S. Faulkner 95, and we'll let Murph respond to this next week because we're doing our big preview. S. Faulkner's asked, what would Kilkenny have to do to beat Limerick in the final?
Ooh, that's a tasty one now. What did they have to do? Simple question to score more than them.
That's why he gets the big bucks, kids.
How will they go about that? I think the best template to date to beat Limerick, although they didn't do it right, was produced yesterday, especially in Croke Park. Again, we would have said it a lot in the podcast about how Croke Park is an entirely different arena to that of Accusey Park, Thurles, etc. When you're taking on Limerick, it's a different gauntlet entirely. And I think that Kilkenny have to stick to themselves, don't get me wrong, and true to themselves the way they play, but also look at the way that Galway kind of matched up against Limerick. Went after their puck out, left certain lads isolated in their full back line, let them have the ball, went man to man, and the way the crowd in the middle third, and try sort of get all that and mix it in with their own style. Again, you're going to have to reproduce the kind of effectiveness the Galway backs had on the Limerick forwards. So Limerick or Kilkenny want to have 4 starting Limerick forwards going off again the next day. Do you know what I mean? They want to kind of nullify all that effect, because again, that's what you have to do to beat them. And I know it's very easy for me to say that and go, geez, that's going to be hard to repeat. That just has to be done. That has to be done. And you're going to have to shoot more than 50% like Galway did. And I think when we look at Kilkenny's efficiency, which is the highest of the weekend, 72%, up around those numbers.
Paul, you keep that under your hat, and we'll talk about it in a lot more detail next week, lads.
Give him time to prepare, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure he'll be making a very good argument. Now, to give Paul his credit, right, and this is twice now, we're giving him credit for Mikey Butler, we're going to give him credit for something else as well. He found a clip of us back about 3-4 weeks ago sneering away at the idea of Kilkenny coming through the All-Ireland semi-final and qualifying for a final. How wrong we were, and Paul has stuck to his guns.
Hold on, that clip now was, again, that's a question of interpretation now. Okay, so
episode 17, Skehill, go back and have a look there. I remembered it.
Let's be honest, we all thought Clare were going to win.
This was before quarter-final stage. This isn't actually before semi-final stage. So this is before the quarter-finals. You were laughing as to, there's no way Kilkenny will be in the final. There's no way.
Well, see, hold on a second now. How much time do we have? Did you honestly believe, right, after Leinster they'd be in the final, regardless of anything?
Well, sure, not only did I believe it, I explained how they were going to go about doing it. So I did believe that they were going to.
So you rang Cody and said, Brian, this is what you do now. This is what you do, right? This is how we're going to do it.
Don't have to ring him. I put my ideas up here every week and Brian just listens to it. That's exactly what it is.
And one more answer before we go. Are Kilkenny going to beat Limerick?
Yeah.
Oh, I like it.
I like it a lot.
Stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
Do you want a bit of praise, Skehill, before we leave? This is like Christmas Eve or something at the moment.
Well, I don't get it at home anyway, so go on, give it to me.
James Skehill, the top fantasy hurling player of the semi-final round.
310 points. I'll give you credit.
Unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, I tell you, the cream will always come to the top, lads.
Go on, Skehill. Who did you put in that did the damage? Because neither of us made transfers and we're miles behind. So we're behind Team Skehill as a group now for the rest of this.
So yeah. I made but see, this is see, lads, this is your problem now. This is your issue, right? You were planning last Saturday. I was planning weeks in advance, right? I took a transfer and put Gillan as my captain, knowing that he'll come good, right? Didn't think he'd come good against Galway now, but I didn't know that he'd come good, right? I put in Cian Kinney, I put in James Ryan, and I put in Declan Hannon on top of an already flying squad. So yeah, 310, and we're going for the juggler again next week or 2 weeks. So,
are you keeping Gillan captain for the final?
100%, 100%, yeah. Because the only options of captaincy really is to do Gillan or do TJ. Yeah, and I just think that. Oh, it won't come to now. We'll get to next week, right?
Yeah, save all that for next week. That's going to be episode 21. Is going to be our bumper preview of the final. Really looking forward to that next week. James, Paul, thanks a million as always.
Sound lads.
Good luck.